a small diameter hole for the threads and a larger diameter hole for the screw shanks. There's 12 screws holding each layer to the adjacent layers. I'm still using the splines for alignment. I've done a drive fit with my blue tape and putting these together one layer at a time, driving the screws in. It's kind of a lengthy process, but it actually went pretty nicely. As I get to the top, the screw angle becomes quite oblique, so now I've gone back to my favorite glue, Type On Original. I'll still use the splines to keep everything aligned, but placing these together is just a lot easier than trying to drive those screws at such an angle. Still lining up my blue tape. On top of this, I'll put some weight to help spread the weight, the clamping pressure. I'll put these little strips of 1/8 inch thick foam on top of the ring. Now I'm going to put a very heavy MDF mounting plate. That's an 8-inch faceplate, and then add some concrete blocks that will provide plenty of pressure for these type of glue jobs. My next step is to install the spring-loaded swivel that will connect my big bowl to the chair base. I've turned this ring of MDF. I've calculated the ID of this ring in relationship to my router base so that I can route a 11-inch diameter opening on the side of my bowl. It's a little bit of a trick. I've got to get this thing secured to my bowl using some double-sided tape shims, trying to get it as secure as I can. Didn't want to, but I finally resorted to a couple of small screws just to make sure this doesn't move on me. But the wedges there did help a lot. 2 little screws here. Those screw holes will never be seen when the project's done. I'll go around the perimeter of this with a large router bit, just taking little passes, making a shallow circular indentation on the side of my assembly. Once I've got the perimeter done, I'll use my router as a planer to remove this center section flush with the outside perimeter. The ring can be removed. I'll put these 2 boards on here to rest my router, and I can go back and forth with this plunge router. Every once in a while I'll drop the bit down another 1/8 of an inch and just plane it back and forth, articulate the boards back and forth to remove all that wood in the center. A little bit of cleanup with my power sander, and this is a nice smooth surface that I can glue a piece of plywood onto. That'll be the next step. I'll be bolting through the plywood to the inside of the bowl to attach my hardware. Here I've turned a disc of plywood. It fits that opening that I've routed. I'll mark the screw holes for mounting my hardware, position this into the opening, and lock it in place with a couple of screws. Drill all the way through to the inside of my bowl with a small diameter bit. That allows me to use that little opening with a forstner bit from the other side. I'm drilling on the inside here, so I've got a place for washers and nuts on the end of bolts that'll go through. Now this plate can be locked in place. I've put a good application of glue underneath here, so this is a real solid connection. Here I'm enlarging the holes for the mounting bolts, but before mounting my hardware, I marked my other disc, the disc that'll be at the top of the base, so I can get those holes drilled in the proper place. To mount the swivel, I'm using 4 1/4-inch bolts with washers and lock washers at both ends. I want this to be as solid as I can make it. These nuts will be quite tight. To close up the end, I've created an Indian blanket design, a floating disc. A little glue at the 2 ends of the end grain will lock it in place, but it fits in this opening fairly loosely, a good 1/16 of an inch gap around the perimeter. The keeper ring, it fits in there snugly. Uh, some glue, some pressure with some concrete blocks finishes off this. As I constructed the chair pedestal, the base, I was a little concerned about the strength of that ring of segments to hold the plywood, so I put these 4 cleats in there just to give a little more support on the underside of that piece of plywood. Well, as things turned out, after putting the pedestal in place with that spring-loaded swivel mechanism, I just didn't like it. First of all, the chair seat was a little too high off the floor, and it didn't seem as stable as I wanted. So I've foregone the spring-loaded swivel. I'm just going to do a solid connection now. I'm putting this piece of 3/4 MDF in place. I use the same kind of 1/4-inch bolts, but now make a solid connection to my pedestal. It worked very well. I mean, it gave a more solid feel. Just really didn't need that swivel rocker mechanism. For cushions, I went to the internet, cushionsgalore.com. They've got a wide range of colors, different fabrics, different sizes. I highly recommend them. Well, this has been quite a lengthy project. In a project like this, it would have been nice to have built a model, a prototype to work out some of the details of construction. But with this thing, this size, just wasn't practical. I would have done a few things differently if I had to start all over. First of all, I wouldn't have messed around with the swivel rocker mechanism. I just happened to have had that mechanism in my shop, and I thought I'd try to incorporate it. But putting the chair onto the base solid, I think that was the best way to go. One of the more difficult decisions was what angle to put this bowl, what slope to put it on the base. And I eventually decided around 35 degrees, 35 degrees from the horizontal. And I think tilting it back a little bit more, maybe towards 30 degrees, would be a more comfortable, lounge position. And I'll probably tweak this mounting with just using some washers as shims on the mounting bolts. That'll change this slope. It'll tilt it back just a little bit more. I used 8/4 material only because that's what I had on hand. I had all these thick timbers. Building the project with 4/4 might have some advantages. It would avoid all that ring splitting. I would have ended up with thicker independent rings. Each one of these rings would have been 3 layers of 4/4, giving me well over a 2-inch thick ring. So I would have needed fewer rings. Might have been an advantage. It would have changed the look of the chair a little bit. I realize that probably very few turners are going to attempt this chair. It's a big project. It takes a lot of time. It requires some big equipment in your shop, and it requires a lot of wood. A surprising amount of wood went into this project. But I think you'll gain an appreciation of other things that you can do with the concept of screwing together multiple layers of independently created rings. Here's a few examples of some of the things that I've done in the past, going back quite a few years, of projects where I independently turn components and then wood screw them together. I hope you enjoyed the DVD, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me. I'm pretty good about answering my emails. Until the next time, keep turning and have fun.